This is In the Trenches, Broadcast 5.
Welcome to In the Trenches, where entrepreneurs, artists, writers, designers, inventors, warriors, and leaders share their stories of doing the hard, creative work that impacts all of our lives. Let the journey inspire you to do something worthwhile, build something bold, and create your life's work. And now, your host, Tom Morkis.
Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of In the Trenches. Today's guest is Nate Kutsko. Nate is a very good friend of mine, and today's broadcast is a little bit different than the ones we had before it because we're actually offering some giveaways and some discounts on some of Nate's products. Now, we'll get into a little bit more detail about what Nate creates and what he's all about, but I'll give you a quick highlight here. He creates some really incredible kitchenware products, some cutting boards and things like that, but a little bit different than anything you've ever seen before. And I say that with 100% authenticity. This stuff, you don't see it in Target, you don't see it anywhere else. He handcrafts this stuff. It's really amazing. So if you want to get your hands on a free board or some other incredible products, or you want some great discounts on some incredible boutique artisan kitchenware, check out tommorkis.com/broadcast5. That's broadcast and the number 5. Without further ado, today's broadcast. Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of In the Trenches. Today, we have a very special guest on the show, Nate Kutsko. Nate is an inventor, designer, artisan, craftsman, artist, cocktail maker extraordinaire, businessman, and very good friend of mine. Nate is the founder and CEO of Costco Kitchen, a company that not only invents incredible products for your home and kitchen, but also teaches aspiring chefs and kitchen artists how to master their craft. Nate began his journey into the world of artisan craftsmanship and entrepreneurship after 5 years of active duty military service. Nate is a West Point grad with a background in engineering, which, and I think he will agree with me, gives his products an incredible advantage over the competition because he designs stuff not only with the beauty of the product in mind, but the versatility and use of the product. So without further ado, Nate, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Tom, for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started Cutsco Kitchen.
Sure. Probably like most inventors, my interest in making innovations and changes to products started at a really young age. I just liked inventing. I liked creating and building. And luckily, growing up, with my parents who had a workshop and were building homes and always sort of doing like the do-it-yourself mentality. So we always had tools and wood and things around the house to basically modify. And so very, very young age, I just started working in the workshop by myself and just building things. And after years of college education and working, I just really got that urge again to create something of my own and eventually market it. So after several false starts of trying to invent some stuff and getting to the market, the idea of modifying and inventing a new cutting board just came to me. It wasn't really something I thought of doing for a business at first. It was really just to help my own cooking skills. At the time, I was courting a woman and who eventually became my girlfriend. And honestly, I just wanted to make better meals for us, home cooked. And so I looked at the boards I had, which were flat and the ones that exist in most kitchens, and thought, there's got to be a better way. So just kind of sketched out some ideas and went down into my shop in my basement and hacked away at some wood and came up with the ideas I have now.
That's incredible. So as far as your start then, you said you dabbled when you were younger, and then I had mentioned your military background and your engineering degree. Would you say that came into play when it came to designing these products, your engineering background?
Absolutely. Just the understanding of how materials behave and, sort of those like structural elements of a building, for instance, can be applied to products as well. Just sort of the I-beam sort of stiffness of a column or beam is really something that I used and leaned on when designing my products. Keeping it simple, but keeping it, making sure it's functional as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a couple of your boards, and I can definitely attest to that. They're high quality stuff, and it's kind of cool because not only do they look great, but they're easy to use, and I think they're outstanding products. You mentioned a little earlier that you had a couple false starts. Do you mind kind of explaining some of those false starts? You don't have to get into too much detail, but I'd be kind of interested in your process of what led up to Cutsco Kitchen, whatever those false starts were.
Sure. I think I'm a lot like a lot of entrepreneurs where I had a really good job selling medical sales. I was a sales rep. I was outside sales, so I was in calling on doctors, and I was in surgeries for orthopedic products and helping assist with those. But overall, I mean, the work schedule, just the demands of the job were extremely stressful, and I just felt like this wasn't the right fit for me after a while. The money was great, but honestly, it was just, it was kind of killing me. I mean, I gained a bunch of weight. I just wasn't healthy. No balance in my life, being on call 24/7. So at that time, I'd kind of come up with some ideas that I thought, maybe I could take to the market. And the first was like this video equipment I assembled for helping sports training, and it was pretty cool, but the business model was really hard to nail down. So I kind of abandoned that and moved on to, I should back up and say I eventually left and resigned from that sales rep job and to pursue my entrepreneur inventing pursuits full time. And then I came up with this another idea, a very niche product that I was able to kind of manufacture in my garage, and just couldn't get the traction I was looking for that. Some of that was just timing with the market, some competitive products that this product I made couldn't support. Just didn't, it was just kind of probably about 4 years behind as far as launch goes. And then during that whole time, I just kept thinking about more and more ideas because I didn't really want to go back to having a day job. But, and that's kind of where Costco Kitchen came up. I figured out the sort of design features of my boards and thought, this might have the best application because, one, it's not really a niche product. I mean, everyone has a kitchen. And two, there's just a way of expanding the product line to not just like one style of board, but multiple. And, I can really kind of expand the catalog to help as many customers as possible.
Sure. So as far as that's concerned, your transition to actually going back from when you were a salesman to starting your first ventures, did you make the jump to do it? Was it a leap? Did you go all in, or was it a slow transition? And I guess what I'm getting at is we spoke with a couple of people earlier in this interview series. AJ Leon, he said he leapt. He just jumped right in. He quit his job and went all in to his new venture. And another person I had on was Al Pinampali. He mentioned that he kind of transitioned slowly. So what was your experience there? Did you just go all in? Did you quit and just start it up? Or had you been planning it for a while and slowly transitioned into entrepreneurship?
The planning process was fairly short. I mean, only a few months for the like that video equipment I came up with. And then I resigned. And at that point, I was kind of on my own. So you could say I kind of leapt into it. I did leap into it pretty quickly, but also, after a while, it takes a while to get a business up and running and kind of find your footing. So, I've since then sort of taken on a variety of sort of part-time jobs and working on things so that I can keep this dream alive without necessarily, and the flexibility of being able to work, around my own schedule, but still pay the bills. It's important.
Sure. And that's, I think, a good point to make. I think a lot of the listeners out there who are considering entrepreneurship or looking into it or actually making the leap might have this idea in their minds that it's got to be all in, all or nothing, that it's make or break. And maybe that works for some people, but I think having that steady side income is important, at least for that transition period.
Definitely. I definitely recommend, unless, honestly, I think the best scenario for an entrepreneur is being married or having a spouse that can provide income during that sort of grace period when you're sort of building the business. That's the best scenario. If you're single like me, you definitely need to have some sort of side income to offset the expenses. And starting a business is expensive, especially in the R&D stage. You're gonna be spending a lot of money building and developing, and so you got to have a nest egg kind of stored up, or a lot of credit, one or the other.
Sure, absolutely. So what would you say was, and to point out that I think Cutsco Kitchen is doing great, and it looks like it is. It's definitely expanding. You have a couple stores that are selling your goods now. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. Part of my strategy was getting the word out, through other retailers, and wholesale for a small business like myself is tough because the margins are so low. You need a lot of volume, but my whole strategy has always been to try and sell the majority of my boards through my own retail shop and website, and do the majority of my sales online. Having a physical store of my own, it just seemed very limited considering how big the internet is and how many people are on it. The wholesale accounts I have are important for for marketing and just kind of letting people know that that my boards exist, and they already have an audience built in.
Sure, and I think that's essential, but that is incredible, really. It seems like a difficult thing to break into. You don't really, at least a lot of the people that I interact with, don't necessarily like invent and create physical products much anymore. A lot of the people I talk to and interview and stuff like that, they do the digital stuff. And I'm not saying that that's easier necessarily, that one is harder than the other per se, but that the physical, like tangible product it's kind of a rarity, honestly, to see entrepreneurs try to take on the task of inventing a physical product and then marketing and selling it. So yeah, kudos to you for doing that.
Thanks.
Yeah. So what was your biggest hurdle when it came to starting your own business? I guess we kind of covered some of that, but would you say that was it, that the uncertainty, or what was your biggest hurdle with starting your business?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I've had experience being self-employed with offering a handyman service. I was an owner operator for that with my father, and actually still do that now part-time because I really, so the idea of self-employment wasn't necessarily a brand new thing for me. I'm very used to sort of being an independent and working alone, and so that part, having that sort of discipline, I had sort of honed over the years. I've always worked in environments that I never really had many coworkers. So sort of being on my own, being alone, having to get up and do work and push this goal forward was something that just took a lot of practice from experiences before. Sure.
So I guess what I'm interested in finding out a little bit more about, and I'm sure the audience is too, how do you come up with your inventions and your designs?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think I have like a sort of, you almost call it like a hypersensitivity to, I don't know, you want to almost call it BS, and inconveniences and frustrations. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what you would call it, but just these things like, man, this is annoying. And, when you're doing something, and I'm using, especially having used, physical tools a lot in my life, I just know, like, man, this is inconvenient. This makes my muscles sore. This hurts. This doesn't feel right. And so, I kind of have a sort of a sensitivity to those things. And so when I started, looking and started cooking, the flat cutting boards that, are common on the market, just all those little steps that you have to do, like transferring it, cutting it, taking it from a board to a bowl was just inconvenient to me. I was like, there's got to be a better way. This doesn't feel right. And so a lot of it really, a lot of my inventions come from the idea of like, something doesn't feel right. And so I was like, all right, well, what can I do to make it feel right? What would make it easier? And that's kind of how I start every sort of question. It's like, there's got to be a better way.
That's awesome. So I guess to sum up then, you identify a problem, or you identify something that's broken, and you ask yourself, how can I fix this? Or how can I improve this? Or how can I make this better?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times, all my solutions are really never conceptual. It's usually something I can do myself. I mean, even if it's really a sloppy prototype, it's some sort of solution I could build or sculpt or do something to kind of get an idea that it could work. It's not a lot of well, this would be great if we had this like advanced machine that does it. A lot of it's just kind of simple solutions to my problems, and they solve them.
Sure, and that's kind of how you started Cutsko Kitchen, right? I mean, you came up with these boards with the specific channels in them and stuff like that. You created that basically in your basement.
Yeah, because of all the tools I have in my workshop, I just finding the right sort of dimensional piece of lumber that would work, and then milling out the channel. I just felt like that would be the best way, and having the equipment to do that was really helpful. So it's, from a physical product standpoint, it's just really helpful to have the tools to prototype stuff early on, and not have to like go to a CAD drawing and draw it out. It's easy to do it physically for me.
Cool. So this kind of transitions into the next question, and I do think it's slightly different than the last. And it's, what is your creative process? Do you subscribe to a particular creative process? Like, obviously we identified how you come up with your inventions, and that's to identify the problem and figure out a solution. But as far as when you start, I guess, developing that solution, do you have like a particular creative process that you go through, or what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I find over time, I've sort of developed a knack for connecting experiences in my life. And I think it's really important for people to have a sort of a catalog of experiences to do stuff. And, it's easy to look at a book and learn from that, but until you've done it, you don't really understand sort of the fears, sort of the insecurities, all the things that go into an action. And so I've had a lot of experiences with stuff, and so when I'm looking at my creative process, I could say I've always looked back at my memories and my experiences and say, is there something there that may be completely unrelated to cooking that could work for this product? And I'm always looking outside of the box, sort of like looking into other industries, other unrelated sort of fields that may have an idea that I could connect with the problem I'm trying to solve.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I like what you said there about having a catalog of experiences. I think that is completely and entirely essential. And it kind of leads into this next question that I want to ask you. That said, everything you just mentioned, what is your greatest fear then with all this stuff, with the entrepreneurship, with the inventions? I mean, do you deal with fear on a daily basis, and then how do you overcome that?
Yeah, fear is always present in my life. As far as being an entrepreneur, there's the biggest fear is financially. When you invest in an idea and you get to this stage, there's a lot of money involved with it, and and so you're always thinking, man, I've really expended a lot of resources to get to this stage. Are people going to buy it? Are they not? I mean, there's always that sort of fear of, geez, I hope people think this is a good idea, and I'm not the only one. And then, it puts a lot of strain on relationships. And that's always, I don't want to necessarily, go so far that, I lose those types of connections. But, yeah, it's tough. It's, you can wake up some morning and just think, man, what am I doing? And
yeah, sure.
It's like,
sure.
this is ridiculous, and
yeah.
But I think the thing that keeps me from quitting is just, I feel like I have a good grip of my strengths, and honestly, like the idea of getting a job would be great for many reasons, but at the end, it's like I just don't feel like I'd be satisfied as a person. I've got this sort of itch I have to scratch, and at this point, and I think everyone has sort of a breaking point, but if I've reached it, I probably forgot, and I've kept going since. But just have to dig down deep and keep going. I mean, also, I mean, continue to evaluate. Okay, is this worthwhile? Is this worthwhile? I mean, where do I need to get to keep? You have to kind of set goals. Okay, this is kind of I need to see some results by this time, or I need to get some results, or you got to see positive steps as well. Sometimes it is a losing battle, sure. And that's why I quit on those other projects until I found the one that fit right.
Yeah, for sure. I actually want to highlight that one thing you mentioned about that idea that you had when you wake up some mornings, you're like, what am I doing? Or that kind of like internal conflict. And it's funny because I was I'm creating this little product on basically creativity. And one of the books I was looking at was Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. And here's a quote from it, which I think really applies. He says, it means that you feel like a phony, like you're winging it, that you really don't have any idea what you're doing. But guess what? None of us do. Ask anybody doing truly creative work and they'll tell you the truth. They don't know where the good stuff comes from. They just show up and do their thing every day. So I thought that was a pretty cool quote. It definitely applies here, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. And that's why I feel like you just got to keep, everyone is out there kind of, like you said, like kind of faking it. I mean, all these businesses, these corporations, and, it's just kind of built on this perception that like, oh, because they're so big, they know what they're doing. But really, I don't think they do. I think they're kind of making as many mistakes as I am. And so, it's sort of encouraging to realize that we're all kind of winging it, especially with marketing.
Yeah.
I mean, think about all the thousands of dollars that people spend on ads that, don't produce anything. So I feel like, okay, I can kind of work this my angle, and in either way, it's sort of the same result, whether I spend $10,000 or just, reach out and network with people. It's sort of, hopefully it works out the same.
Sure. I would actually submit that it's better that way, that you spend less money doing that. I mean, I guess I know there's still room for conventional advertising and stuff like that, but I think the real marketing nowadays, especially online, is creating that personal connection, which you're doing, with Cutsco Kitchen, and you're doing with your product. And I think you see all the successful people doing it. They have this unique, sincere, authentic connection with their customers. And that's it. Like, that's the permission marketing aspect of it. And I think you've got that down, and you're building it the right way, as opposed to just throwing money at advertisements, which may or may not work. And I don't think for the long haul work. Yeah,
thanks. I agree. I mean, I think, for entrepreneurs that are getting out there, I think you really have to think outside the traditional marketing model, which is print ads, in magazines especially. I mean, how many people read magazines anymore? I mean, there's so many distractions out there that, you really have to be wise, especially when you're on a budget, early on and don't have any investors yet. You're like, you got to make every dollar count. And, the best way is to look beyond those traditional models and, connect with people, especially, in the blogosphere. People have worked really hard to build audiences and connecting through those audiences that already have some sort of commonality between them, whether it be cooking or creating. That's sort of the new wave of marketing.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. And I see it on a daily basis, that form or that style of marketing being successful, because I think it comes down to the fact that it is personal and it's authentic. I think people now more than ever can see through phony stuff better than they could before. It's easier to get to the truth of things. So just being authentic and being truthful, I think, is your best bet. And I think you're doing that, like I mentioned before. And I think all the successful entrepreneurs out there, successful artists too, are doing the same thing. They're just being sincere and honest and transparent. So I guess the next question I'd like to ask you would be if you had a particular creative tip or trick for someone who's trying to come up with creative stuff, whether it's entrepreneurial stuff, whether it's art. What is your number one creative tip or trick for coming up with great ideas?
I think probably just doing stuff. If you're a cook, then cook. Or if you want to cook, for instance. I mean, if you've never cooked before, just pick it up and do it. And I've made many mistakes in the kitchen, and it's like, all right, well, I'll just try it again the next time. I think you have to keep trying. Never quit on the first try is really kind of the best advice. And I would say that probably because if I had given up on my first business idea, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I mean, all those failures has got me to where I'm at, and it's really, those failures have been experience. And I realized, okay, you know what, that didn't work for that, but I think I can use it for this now. And creatively, you just got to do it just over and over and over again until you get the results you want, really.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I like that. I like your thought process on that, and I think it's true. Just if you want to do something, do it. And that's how you get better at it, and that's how you improve, and that's how you come up with great stuff. So I guess we could honestly probably talk for another couple hours. To be honest with you, I have about 1 million questions, but I think I'd like to wrap it up here and say, with this final question, what advice do you have for the aspiring entrepreneur?
To me, I think the most important thing is market analysis. Early on, I think really having an honest assessment of how big your market is, who your market is. You really need to look at, okay, what am I selling? And, how am I going to make a living from it? Because here's some examples. I mean, I had one of those products I was trying to sell really should have been retailing at about $10. And so if it cost me $3 to make, that's about $7 in, gross profits. So $7 isn't that much for one product. When you think about how many I need to sell to make a living, it's a lot. So, really evaluate, the product and how much you're going to have to sell to, to make this a full-time gig. And in some cases, you might realize, this may not provide a full living for me, but it could, it could make X amount of money per month. I mean, maybe a few $100, maybe $1,000, and then, then slowly kind of hopefully grow from there. That's really important. Is sort of the cost of what you're trying to sell, and then, and realizing how many you'll have to sell.
So it sounds like, if I were to summarize, you want to identify the market you're interested in getting into. You really want to do the hard analysis of who's there, who are the customers, who wants to pay for stuff, and then identify what you can, I guess, what your addition is to that, how you can identify some product that people will buy in that market or in that niche.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just quick example, man. I love the site Kickstarter.com.
Sure.
I've submitted a project to it. It didn't get approved, actually, for these boards a long time ago. And but I go on there for inspiration and kind of looking at other things. And, and you look at some of these gadgets that are like really small. I mean, they can't cost very much. And you realize, man, that guy's going to have to sell, 10,000 of those widgets just to get to, $50,000 in sales. I mean, that's a lot of inventory, and that's a lot of transactions. And so, early before you start thinking about creating a business, really, look at how many customers are really out there, how many people are going to have to show this to actually buy it. I mean, if you use that sort of rule of thumb, like, 3 to 5% on the high end of how many people you'll have to show this to actually wants to purchase it, the conversion rate, the numbers really add up quickly to how many people you need to get in front of. But that shouldn't stop you from creating. In many ideas I've had, it's like, man, you know what? I should just made that for myself and be happy, and sometimes,
Sure.
Really just oftentimes should just create for yourself, first and foremost. And then if there is a market, great. If not, at least you have that one sort of unique item that you made, that no one else in the world has.
I love it. Create for yourself. That, I think, is powerful. I love that.
Thanks, Tom.
Well, Nate, thank you so much for being on the show today. I think there's just an incredible amount of content in here. And I just want to thank you so much for being on the show with us today. I think everybody really appreciates it.
Well, I appreciate the time. And, we've had a lot of great conversations together, and I hope that continues into the future.
Absolutely, Nate. Take it easy, man. We'll catch
Thanks.
up soon. And that wraps up today's broadcast. If you're interested in Nate's boutique artisan handcrafted kitchenware, check out CutscoKitchen.com. That's Kutsko kitchen.com. Or go to tommorkes.com/broadcast5, where I'll have links to his website, but I'll also have some special discounts and some special giveaways just for listeners of In the Trenches. That's entirely courtesy of Nate Kutsko of Cutsko Kitchen. These boards really are incredible. I own a couple myself, and I always highly recommend them to friends and family. If you're into independent art, boutique artisan craftsmanship, there's really no excuse. You got to at least check it out. Check out his website or check out tommorkes.com/broadcast5. As always, good luck on your projects, what you're working on, and everything involved in creating your life's work. I hope to get you on the next episode. This is Tom Morcus, and if you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Thank you for listening to In the Trenches. Your creative work doesn't stop here. Join the Resistance, the small but growing army of entrepreneurs and artists putting a dent in the world at www.tommorkis.com. Never fight alone. Join the Resistance.